According to General Hospital spoilers, Jason Morgan and Britt Westbourne have at least 4 reasons to be together. This is arguably a great GH couple to root for, so let's talk about why Britt and Jason deserve the opportunity to create some magic as a romantic couple. 1. Jason sorely needs a love interest. For starters, he has been without a true love interest for far too long. Because Jason is such a popular character, he needs a romantic storyline that followers can follow. Unfortunately, Sam McCall has died, Carly Spencer is in the friend zone, Sasha Gilmore Corbin has left town, and the show is uninterested in rehashing Jason's relationship with Elizabeth Baldwin. The timing is ideal for Britt to return to the picture and bring some love back into Jason's life. Kelly Thibault has confirmed to TV Insider that she is portraying Britt, and all indicators lead to Jason falling for her all over again. 2. Britt is Jason's ideal messy woman. Britt is a messy, flawed person, which makes her a compelling character. Jason is a complicated character, given that he's a mob hitman with a golden heart, so he requires someone equally intricate to adore. Britt fits the bill and can add some entertainment to this love story. Jason can be fairly stoic and lacks personality, so pairing him with someone spunky and unexpected like Britt will keep things interesting. 3. Jason sees Britt in a way that no one else does. Of course, Jason sees another side to Britt and isn't hesitant to protect her. As this storyline progresses, Jason and Britt may develop a classic us against the world romance. 4. Even Kelly Thibault wants Jason and Britt to reunite. In her Britt confirmation interview, Thibault stated that she hopes for Britt and Jason's next chapter as well. As far as story goes, obviously, I want Britt and Jason to get back together, Thibault replied. I'm very much excited to pick up where we left off. Jason and Britt will have that chance in the coming months, but Jason needs to find her and prove she's alive first. General Hospital teasers indicate that Britt Westbourne may or may not be heading to PC. We know her actor, Kelly Thibault, has been rehired, and fans saw her for the first time on the Friday 18 episode. But we're not sure who her character is, though we'd be willing to bet big that the Britch is back. Let's see what we know so far. Is the Britch back? Britt's name has recently come up on the show, with her relationship with Rocco Falconeri becoming a major topic of discussion. Rocco discovered that Britt implanted him as an embryo into herself, gave birth and raised him for a while. Lulu Spencer and Dante Falconeri were devastated by this revelation, as they had intended to tell their son about his origin story, but had never done so. As a result, he discovered out on his own and has become fascinated with Britt. General Hospital spoilers. Britt returns, with Jason's secret baby. Rocco is obsessed with Britt. Thibault debuted as Britt in 2012 and died in 2023, a victim of the Hook serial killer. Many people are guessing about what Britt has been doing since her death, with some wild hypotheses circulating. For example, some believe Britt survived and gave birth to Jason's baby. We want this to be true, and the show has made much of Jason's fathering abilities, encouraging us to assume he may find another Bambino in this universe. Kelly Thibault returns to General Hospital. Thibault told TV Insider that she never believed she'd return to GH. So here we are. She admitted, I did walk away from my last day on set thinking that I would never return, and relocated to London. When she returned to the United States, she approached GH's executive producer, Frank Valentini, about a comeback. Never say never. Is Britt back on PC? In the airport on Friday, Jason noticed someone who looked quite similar to Britt. Is it Britt? Does she have a secret baby to inform Jason about? Britt returning to town with Jason's baby would provide a lot of storyline. Tell us what you think about this soapalicious prospect. Jason and Britt's romance on General Hospital defied expectations from the beginning. While Jason Morgan had long been bound by toxic loyalty and emotional constraint, Britt Westbourne offered a wild card appeal and complicated sensitivity that revealed a totally different side of him. What began as an adrenaline-fueled mission full of secrets and emotional wounds evolved into something more intimate and real. Their chemistry was not forced, it was natural, based on shared trauma, mutual respect, and an unexpected warmth that many fans appreciated. The truth is that Jason and Britt's closeness was stronger than many of his previous relationships. It wasn't about convenience or family affiliations. It was about two shattered individuals seeing each other clearly and making the decision to heal together. Jason has always been a man of control, measured, constant and unwavering. With Carly, Sam, and others, he frequently played the guardian, a stern figure who rarely showed vulnerability. Britt, on the other hand, provided a welcome break from the pressure. He didn't need to perform, he just had to be. Britt pushed him, mocked him, and never treated him like a mythical hero. She saw him as a human, not an enforcer, protector, or damaged knight. That distinction mattered. It indicated that Jason could soften around her. He was able to smile, joke, and allow his humanity to shine through in ways that few others could. Britt allowed him freedom to grow, to experience something other than the normal cycles of obligation and tragedy. Britt, on the other hand, has spent most of her life fighting her own demons. Britt, the daughter of the villainous Caesar Faison and Liesel Obrecht, was introduced to General Hospital as a manipulator who used her connections to gain power and relationships. She made numerous mistakes, most of which haunted her afterward. Unlike many in Port Charles, Britt attempted to evolve. Her arc was about more than just redemption. It was about learning to be truly vulnerable and to love unconditionally. When Jason entered her life during her Huntington's diagnosis, something changed. He made no judgments about her past or her terrible future. He stood beside her without trying to fix her. That simple act of presence laid the groundwork for everything they could become. Their bond was not rushed. It grew gradually, silently, and without the weight of expectation. When Britt revealed her sickness, Jason did not withdraw. He listened. That alone distinguished him. Britt was frightened of dying, being a burden, and being abandoned. But Jason didn't run. He made room for her pain, and that trust enabled them to connect emotionally in ways neither had anticipated. Their brief trip to Canada was one of the most emotionally charged moments in Jason's story in years. There was laughter, longing, and a shared sense of isolation, which brought them even closer together. It felt authentic. Not staged or influenced by external turmoil. It was simply two people learning to be there for one another. When Carly's impending wedding to Jason was revealed, it became clear how complicated his emotional life remained. When Jason and Carly agreed to marry for the sake of the business, it reopened the pain that Jason might never be free of other people's needs. With Britt, everything were easier. She did not seek power, money, or protection. She wanted someone to stand with her. For a brief moment, Jason gave her that. The sadness that followed when he walked away was more than simply painful. It was devastating because it represented the loss of something pure. Jason did not abandon Britt because he stopped caring. He left because he felt constrained by duties, a life centered on everyone else's survival but his own. That moment of sacrifice was heartbreaking, not because it was honorable, but because it exposed how little Jason had ever chosen for himself. With Britt, he could have finally accomplished that. Even after their split, the emotional impact lingered. Britt never condemned him, even when he chose Carly. She lamented the loss of something she genuinely believed could have lasted. What about Jason? He never progressed emotionally. The chemistry, the memories, the unspoken feelings all remained. When Jason was assumed deceased, Britt's grief was not exaggerated. It was raw. She had genuinely loved him. And not in a flashy, possessive way, but as someone who made you feel visible for the first time in your life. That grief spoke volumes. It wasn't a performance. It had been lived in. One of the most convincing reasons Jason and Britt work as a relationship is that they operate outside of Port Charles's traditional power structures. They were neither a legacy couple nor a recycled pairing. They did not stem from years of back-and-forth drama, paternity disputes, or mob allegiances. Their narrative was unique. It started in turmoil and ended, for the time being, in heartbreak. But in between, there was room for something new. Something unburdened. Britt was not attempting to fit into Jason's world. She did not strive to be Carly or Sam. She remained herself, brash, humorous, sardonic, and intensely sensitive. Jason respected that. He never attempted to change her. That level of mutual acceptance is unusual at General Hospital. There's simply no denying that Jason smiled more with Britt. Not a half smile. A genuine smile. One that softened his eyes and made him appear younger, lighter, and freer. That may appear to be a minor detail, but for a man whose life has revolved around violence and sacrifice, joy is revolutionary. Britt brought him delight. Even in the face of death and illness, they discovered comedy, tenderness, and optimism. Britt asked him to be nothing more than a man who was emotionally available. Jason in turn grew into a better man while with her. She did not demand it. Rather, she inspired it. Jason and Britt have an emotional maturity that many other couples in Port Charles lack. Their bond was more than just chemistry. It was all about choices. They picked each other when everything was at its worst. Jason wasn't sure he had a future, and Britt surely didn't. Still, they opened their hearts. That type of bravery, the willingness to fall in love despite no promises or guarantees, is uncommon. The majority of soap romances rely on huge reveals and dramatic twists. However, this one was founded on trust and the ability to show up every day no matter how painful. That's what made it so powerful. Even in Britt's final days on the show, her recollections of Jason persisted. She never replaced him emotionally. That dedication, that depth reflected something true. And while the show shifted Jason's focus to other plots, the emotional pattern of his relationship with Britt was never completely erased. In fact, it was one of the few partnerships that appeared to be based on emotional honesty rather than plot necessity. Fans root for Jason and Britt because they believe they deserve to feel safe and loved, not just as a couple. There is also the additional dimension of narrative balance. Jason, who had spent years circling the same emotional loops, finally met someone who told him a different story. Sam's drama was endless. Carly's boundaries were constantly blurred. Britt, on the other hand, had an excellent relationship. It was new. It provided him with an emotional clarity that he rarely experiences. That's why so many viewers gravitated toward the combination. It seemed like a reprieve from the past, an opportunity for emotional regeneration. Of course, soap operas thrive on drama, and no couple is ever permitted to be quiet for too long. Even within that context, some couples achieve their peace. Jason and Britt were one of those uncommon pairings. They were not flawless. They had weaknesses. However, their love was not manipulative, transactional, or toxic. It was straightforward, honest, and greatly needed. In a world like Port Charles where danger is always a heartbeat away, such a bond is worth keeping. Even if Jason later returns and the tale diverges, Britt's influence on him should not be overlooked. Their time together, however fleeting, allowed him to contemplate a life outside the shadows. Britt reminded him that love does not have to include sacrifice. It might manifest as laughter, peaceful understanding, and shared courage. That memory should remain the foundation of his emotional journey. Fans do not flock behind couples simply because they look beautiful together. They unite when the emotional truth of a relationship is revealed. Jason and Britt told us the truth, not by huge gestures or exaggerated announcements, but through quiet moments, kind support, and true love. For a man like Jason, who has lived a life marked by violence, sadness, and solitude, such a bond is not just uncommon. It is transforming. And this is why they belong together. Not just because of chemistry or narrative potential, but because they discovered something that most people, both on and off screen, spend their entire lives pursuing. Something quiet, robust, and authentic. Something worthy of fighting for. Britt Westbourne's return to Port Charles was destined to cause controversy, but no one anticipated it to happen under such mysterious and combustible circumstances. As she stepped out of the elevator at General Hospital, all eyes were on her. Some were startled, some were perplexed, and a few, particularly those who knew her relationship with Jason Morgan, were immediately skeptical. Her mere presence was enough to spark old tensions, but reports in the halls suggested she wasn't alone. Whispers of a secret child, Jason's child, followed her like an unshakable shadow. Britt had been gone for over a year, presumably to seek treatment for her Huntington's disease abroad. But her rapid comeback, accompanied by a new calm confidence and a guarded vitality, hinted that there was much more to her narrative than just a return to health. She had not contacted anyone before returning, not even her former confidants or foes. Her first order of business was not medical but personal. She quickly requested a meeting with Elizabeth Weber, whom she had rarely engaged with in the past. Elizabeth's horror was palpable when Britt mentioned Jason's name. Britt stated that her time away had not been spent entirely alone. She had discovered that, prior to Jason's believed death in the Crete tunnel collapse, the two of them had shared more than just a short relationship. Apparently, their brief but intense romance had left a lasting impact, one she hadn't realized until after she'd already departed Port Charles. She found out she was pregnant at a regular scan, shortly after beginning her treatment abroad. Devastated and alone, Britt kept the news to herself, unsure what to do with the kid when her own health was so unclear. She did not tell anyone. Not Liesel, not Brad, and definitely not Sunny. She was afraid of what others would say, that she was using the baby to gain power or sympathy, or worse, that she was faking it all to stay connected to Jason's legacy. But she was not lying. Roman, a nearly 1-year-old boy, shared Jason's steel-gray eyes and stern manner. Britt had fiercely protected him, raising him in secret in Switzerland while undergoing medical treatment and planning her return. The announcement that Jason Morgan may have a son caused shockwaves across Port Charles. Carly was the first to confront Britt. She wanted answers, including a DNA test, and made it very plain that she did not believe Britt's narrative. Britt did not fight back. She remained calm and almost detached. She agreed to the test, knowing full well what the outcome would be. Carly's suspicion was not about Britt lying, but about what it meant if she was telling the truth. If Roman genuinely was Jason's kid, the consequences were enormous. Not just emotionally but legally, financially, and in terms of the underworld connections Jason had spent his entire life juggling. Will the youngster be a target? Would Sunny feel obligated to intervene and defend him? So what about the Quartermaines? Monica has already lost her son multiple times. Knowing that a bit of Jason is still alive may be a blessing, but it is also a tremendous wound. Drew, who had done his best to carry Jason's legacy while forging his own path, was unsure how to react. He had wrestled with the ghost Jason had left behind. Could he accept this youngster as family, or would it widen the gap of loss? Britt was not interested in reliving past dynamics. She made it clear that she was not there to ask for assistance or support. She did not want Jason's family to raise Roman. She did not want to fight anyone over money or custody. She simply believed that Roman had the right to know where he came from. And if he asked, she wanted him to know that his father was courageous, loyal, and flawed in all the ways that made him human. But not knowing how long her health would last, Britt knew she had to make some difficult decisions about Roman's future. That's when her chat with Elizabeth turned critical. Regardless of their history, Britt valued Elizabeth's integrity. She asked her for something big, to be Roman's guardian if anything happened to Britt. Elizabeth was completely caught off guard. She hadn't spoken to Britt in years, and their last contacts hadn't been particularly warm. But Britt insisted. She'd been watching from a distance, and she believed Elizabeth knew Jason better than most. Elizabeth hesitated, but as she stared at Roman, she noticed something eerily familiar. She said she would think about it. Meanwhile, Valentine Cassadine grew interested about the unusual tempest raging around Britt. Despite their lack of personal connection, he understood secrets and leverage. He approached Britt with an offer, veiled in concern but clearly strategic. If she required protection, resources, or assistance with legal impediments, he could supply them. In exchange, he requested access not to the child but to information. Britt declined. She didn't trust him yet. However, his interest put her on high alert. She was confident that if Valentine found out, others would follow suit. Meanwhile, Sunny sat quietly with the news. Jason's recent disappearance and suspected death had already thrown his world off balance. Hearing that Britt had carried his best friend's child reignited scars that had barely begun to heal. He wondered what Jason would have done. He imagined the conversation they never had. About Britt, love, and family. Sunny wasn't sure how to proceed. He didn't want to undermine Britt, but he also knew he couldn't let Roman become a pawn in someone else's game. He made one commitment to himself. Roman would be protected at any costs. Roman's presence began to spread throughout town. Sam was at a loss for what to say to Danny, who still remembered his father fondly. Scout, who was too little to understand, noticed a change in their household. Drew kept a close eye on his daughter, and sought to protect her from the complications of a new half-brother she'd never met. Monica, on the other hand, asked to meet Roman. When Britt finally brought him to the Quartermaine mansion, the atmosphere was solemn, somber, and filled with melancholy. Monica knelt alongside him, grasped his small hand and whispered, "Welcome home." Britt had no idea how long she would remain. Part of her felt as if she was running out of time. Her symptoms had subsided, but they were never gone. She experienced disorientation, occasional hand tremors, and lasting weariness. She despised the thought of Roman watching her fade. But she also understood that, despite the drama and heartache, staying in Port Charles was the right decision. She wanted Roman to understand his roots, even if it meant confronting the people she had once pushed away. As the DNA findings verified what Britt already suspected, reality struck Port Charles like a tsunami wave. Jason Morgan has a son, and he was here. Now the game was changing. Roman's presence added fresh complexities to the ongoing struggles between families, mobsters, and power players. Britt's powerful maternal instinct guided her every move, but she couldn't anticipate what would happen next. The Corinthos family, the Quartermaines, and everyone else would have to decide how to deal with this new reality. Will they accept the youngster as one of their own, or will old grudges poison the well before he even gets a chance? What no one could deny was that Britt was no longer the same woman who had previously maneuvered, schemed, and lied her way through Port Charles. She was a mother now, a fighter, and Roman, Jason Morgan's kid, could be the most powerful wild card in town.